So a while ago, I made a video on the quote-unquote basics of Mario Kart Deluxe.
What's going on, guys? It's me, John. My first video as opposed to my introduction video is going to be the start of my Mario Kart Deluxe guide.
It was pretty trash. What I talked about in the video wasn't wrong, but it doesn't appeal to everyone, which is what the basics should do. In any case, this is not a part 2 to that series, but rather a restart. Now that I've become a much better version of myself, I'd say I'm much more qualified to share what I've learned over the last 3.5 years. This video is going to be what the basics should have been back in 2017, because I'm appealing to everyone in this video. This includes people who have yet to play their first competitive match in anything in this game. I'll be uploading an edition of this series every Monday, with the episodes after this one being for covering one cup in its entirety per episode. As the title implies, this video is made to prepare those who aren't experienced in this game for what I'll be talking about in the coming weeks. But with all that out of the way, let's start giving her, bud. When it comes to your combo in this game, there's one hidden factor that is super important: mini turbo. This stat defines how quickly you'll be able to charge up a mini turbo, as well as how long your mini turbo will last. Even though it's hidden, you can generalize your mini turbo stat by looking at your acceleration stat. Now, while this is the most important stat in the game, you don't want to neglect everything else. Otherwise, you'd probably be on the slowest combo in the game. Your speed and weight are also pretty important, since they get nerfed pretty heavily by the rollers alone. This is pretty ironic given that one of the most popular vehicles online is lacking the most in speed and weight, as well as the fact that my man Ace T-Man can farm idiots in Division 1 with Shy Guy. But regardless, here are the most popular combos online. The general community will flock to one of the heavyweight groups, consisting of DK, Roy, and Waluigi. Now that the speed and weight stats are covered, we don't need to worry too much about those. As for the vehicles, you have a few options. The most popular vehicles online are the Wild Wiggler and Mr. Scooty, and for inwards, it's the Yoshi bike. You do have some other options for vehicles though. The standard bike has the same stats as Wiggler, the Bitty Buggy has the same stats as Scooty, and the Comet has the same stats as the Yoshi bike. You'll see people switch to Streetle or Landship as well because of their speed stat underwater when tracks like Dolphin Shoals or Cheap Sheep Beach get picked. So what character vehicle combo should you use? Well, it really just depends on your playstyle. If we're comparing the Wiggler to Scooty, the Wiggler shines in speed and weight. Thus, you can take very basic lines, which can help people make more calculated decisions on the fly. As for Scooty, it shines in acceleration and mini turbo. You'll have to focus more on driving and getting consistent mini turbos, but for some, including myself, it leads to being more immersed in the game, and I personally can move out of many sticky situations a lot more easily on Scooty. But if you've been watching me for some time now, you might be wondering, why do I use Wario Scooty? Well, I don't even think this is an opinion. I think it's a fact that it's the perfect hybrid between Waluigi Wiggler and Waluigi Scooty. By moving up a notch in the heavyweight category, you're nearly making up for the speed, and you're making up for the weight you lose for using Scooty instead of Wiggler. One of the main complaints people have when using Scooty is that it's super easy to get bumped off, and that complaint is completely abolished when using Wario Scooty. And on top of that, you still get all of the benefits that come from using Scooty in the first place. You barely lose any acceleration in mini turbo, so it's still super easy to chain mini turbos on the fly and recover quickly after getting hit. I find it insane that sometimes I feel like I should switch to Wiggler because for my playstyle, I feel like this is the absolute best combo for me. So what's your playstyle? If you want to be able to take a breather and feel like you can make more calculated decisions because you don't have to worry as much about driving, use the Wiggler. If you feel like getting immersed in the experience by driving like crazy will suit you best and not hinder your item management, use Scooty. Your character choice is really up to you, but the Waluigi category is the most common, so if you don't want to blame your combo, then there you go. Now you know that this video appeals to everyone since I'm about to go over the controls. This shouldn't take too long though. You use the left analog stick to steer, press A to accelerate, B to brake, tap L or ZL to use your item, or hold the button to trail your item, R or Z are in combination with holding left to right on the left analog stick to drift, and X to look behind you. While drifting, you can also hold B to brake drift, which can be very beneficial when going around really tight turns like Rainbow Road, and especially if you need to slow down after catching up to someone who's trailing. If you hold A and B without drifting, you can turn in place, but you should only use this if you're in a terrible situation and need to reposition yourself. Now let's talk about these three guys, because they are a little different. I'll start off with auto acceleration since you can't really do much with it outside of the ordinary. As the name implies, the game accelerates for you. I don't know why anyone would use this, but if you do, just make sure you hold A A on 2 to get the starting boost, since auto acceleration won't do that for you. And now for smart steering. On its own, you should not use this regularly. It's just super restrictive, and you can't get ultra mini turbos either. However, this can come in handy if you can react before falling off. Let's take DK Jungle for example. Sometimes you might fall off after the super bounce, but if you can envision yourself falling off before it happens, quickly pause, press L, then unpause, and smart steering will reposition you back on the track. Now, obviously, you don't want to keep it on. So in this scenario, just pause, press L, then unpause after getting the super mini turbo. I don't use this strategy that often, but it's still good to know. And finally, tilt controls. For regular driving, tilt controls will get you the same results as regular controls. So really, whatever you're comfortable with. However, in some situations, tilt controls have a massive advantage on glider sections. A major example would be the Dolphin Shoals glider cut. You save way more time holding left with motion controls than left with regular controls, as you can see here. I personally don't do this in races, but it is something I'm considering getting into as time goes on. So that's about everything you need to know about the controls in this game. Now let's talk about the game's tech. Yeehaw, bud. Even though there isn't a whole lot of tech in this game, these techniques are still super important to know. I'll go through all of them as well as how to execute them properly. Soft drifting can be defined as charging a mini turbo at the same rate as a tight drift without actually drifting tight. The angle at which you soft drift is about 75 degrees from the x-axis, whichever direction you're drifting. I'm pretty sure soft drifting is a bit harder in this game compared to others though, so if you haven't already gotten this technique down to a science, it might be a little challenging to get the hang of. But once you do get the hang of soft drifting, you'll be able to pull it off like it's another day in the office. There are only 3 tracks in this game where you can use the super bounce technique, but that does not excuse how vital it is to learn. On Cloud Top Cruise, DK Jungle, and Music Park, instead of going into the bounce like you would any typical ramp, you want to charge a mini turbo and release it as you go off the bounce. This will give you a huge boost forward and is way more valuable than getting a regular trick. Cloud Top Cruise and DK Jungle are both pretty straightforward in this matter, but on Music Park, if using the super bounce isn't in your best interest, you can simply drift into the bounce and you'll still be in a solid position. Unfortunately, this technique cannot be done with inwards in any scenario. Even the easier bounce strat on Music Park doesn't work. But to sum this all up, this technique is super easy to learn, and it's imperative that if you use an outward drifting vehicle that you use this trick on these tracks. Even beyond super bounces, getting mini turbo tricks can be really beneficial given your situation. The technique is as simple as it sounds. Simply release your mini turbo as you go off the ramp. This tech really shines on tracks like Excite Bike Arena and Ribbon Road, and sometimes it's just a convenient thing to do, even if it isn't faster in your given scenario. This technique isn't too special, but it can help a lot on a track like Excite Bike Arena. If you're drifting while in the air, you can still charge up your mini turbo the same way you could if you weren't airborne, which is pretty sick. In some scenarios, releasing your mini turbo while in the air will do you a lot of good. A great example for this technique is on DK Jungle. As you can see here, you get quite a big boost forward. It's not the most useful, but it can help quite a bit if you're trying to extend a lead or trying to barely get ahead of someone. For a ton of gliders, it's actually better to pull off some kind of mini turbo before your glider pops out. I made a whole video on every glider strat in this game, which I'll link in the description. There isn't much else to talk about regarding this technique though. As long as you have some sort of mini turbo charged up as you approach the glider ramp, you should be giving her full throttle. Now, unfortunately, I learned about this technique shortly after uploading the glider strats video because I'm just that knowledgeable of the game. But either way, most glider strats in this game are actually faster if you press R or ZR just after going off the glider ramp before your glider pops out. It's a really easy technique to pull off and looks so clean when you utilize it, and I know that for a fact. And in the coming weeks, when I talk about each track and the best strategies on them, I will mention which gliders to do low gliders and which gliders not to do low gliders, so be on the lookout for that. While this technique is probably the easiest to pull off in the game, don't let that belittle how valuable it can be. Motion tricking is such a safe way to ensure you get a trick, and considering how important tricks are in this game, using this technique can be very reassuring. It's even blatantly more useful on the Dolphin Shoals eel section. I don't think I need to explain this. It's just insane. Shake that controller. You will not regret it. That's all there is to talk about regarding the tech in this game though. So yeah, yeehaw bud. I hope you got something out of this video. I know this video was definitely a lot more player friendly, but this should set the tone for the next few weeks. This video was made to detail what you need to know before you get started. If you want to see how to use some of the power items to the best of their ability, I'll leave the playlist in the description. I'd also recommend checking out my top 10 shortcuts and strategies in this game if you're interested in some of the cool things this game has to offer. But with that being said, things are about to get a lot crazier next week. So thank you so much for watching. Have yourselves a fantastic day, and keep on giving her, bud.